heavyweight title. So, and when you read about him, he just seems like an incredible fighter. Not only, a lot of people talk about his power, but he also seemed like a very cerebral guy. Somebody like Joe Gons, actually. Joe Gons used to just sit and watch Bob Fitzsimmons fight, and he learned a few, tips and tricks from him. At number 2, I would probably have Jimmy Wilde, who is widely considered the best flyweight in history.
Yeah, I had him at 3 or 4. I think I had him at 4, but my problem with him is his resume is really good, but you got to question just the weight he fought at, how good of fighters he fought.
That's true. That is true. But he did fight a good number of people. I believe he fought, who was it? Jimmy Lynch? Maybe I'm mistaken here. No, he fought. Okay, so he fought.
Well, I know he fought Joe Simons. He fought Johnny Rosner. Beat a guy by the name of Young Zulu Kid, who I don't know much about, but he's got a cool ass name. See, that's the thing. When you get on here, outside of Lynch, I don't really see a lot.
Well, true. Well, Simons and Smith were both, top-level guys at the time.
That's why I brought him up first.
Yeah. Well, and, Tansy Lee was a good fighter. Joe Lynch, he's a Hall of Famer. Memphis Palmore, he's a Hall of Famer. I believe he fought.
Herman he beat, who was the former world bantamweight champion.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I understand it. It's not as deep as Ted Kid Lewis's, who fought in a...
Not a big disagreement. I had him at 4. You had him at, what, 2 or 3?
Yeah. I'd have Wild second. I'd probably have Ted Kid Lewis at 3rd as opposed to Lennox Lewis. And then I would probably have Lewis 4th. I would probably rate Ken Buchanan a little bit higher than you do. I like him a bit more than Joe Calzaghe. I did like Calzaghe, and I thought when he beat Mikkel Kessler, he showed something special there. He showed an extra gear. In a fight that was close in the beginning.
And you had the Hopkins win, which people could say he was old, but hell, Hopkins' best fights might have been after that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think his best wins are at light heavyweight. But I also have, Chris Eubank, Ken Buchanan, Nigel Penn. I probably wouldn't rank Ricky Hatton that high, even though I was a huge Ricky Hatton fan. I saw him live at the Thomas & Mack Center in Las Vegas.
Against Castillo?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, my dad's always been a big fan of Mexican fighters, and he just had to see the Castillo fight. And, of course, Castillo he was a little way from the Corrales fight, but, after the Corrales.
He'd been through some wars by then.
Yeah. And so,
but my thing about Hatton is this. I think if you remember, Floyd Mayweather didn't want any part of Ricky Hatton at junior welterweight. No,
and that was Hatton's best weight.
Yeah, and I think Hatton's one of the 2 or 3 best junior welterweights, especially over the last 20 years. He beats Kostya, which nobody thought Kostya was over the hill when they fought. And, I think Hatton gets underrated just because of the 2 knockout losses at the end of his career. But right. I think if he fights Mayweather, I think at junior welterweight, I think that's a much better fight. And I think there can be a case made that Hatton would have had a decent shot to beat him. We saw what Castillo did at lightweight with him.
Yeah, well, I think had we had it at 140 and had we had a little bit better ref, because I've read Hatton's biography too. I own it. And he complains a lot about Joe Cortez. A lot of people. Did.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed to fight inside. As soon as he got close to Mayweather, they'd break him up.
Right, and Hatton complains about that in his biography. He didn't he didn't say a lot of bad things about Cortez, but he was upset that he had to, against Mayweather, who's so defensively sound, he had to work so hard to get inside, and then as soon as he get there, Cortez would, just break him up. And, I would have loved to see that fight at 140. And the thing about Hatton, too, is I've seen every fight on video. I actually own his career set. In my opinion, he may have been the best body puncher of his era. A lot of his old fights, I've seen everything. he was just superb. I mean, you know, I know a few people would disagree with me and say, oh, Miguel Cotto, you know, he had a big left hook to the body. But Cotto didn't stop a lot of guys with his left hook to the body. He helped break them down. But typically it was an accumulation. But if you watch some of Hatton's old fights, he was just a superb. I don't think I've ever seen anybody throw the combinations like he did. I mean, he set his punches up well. He would move, pivot, go to the pit, and it wasn't just a left hook to the body. You know, that like Mickey Ward, you know, where he had that famous tap to the head, tap to the body. Hatton was more versatile, in my opinion. He could stop guys with his right hand, stop guys with shots to the pit of the stomach, you know, and he just threw beautiful combinations. Love Hatton. That's a guy I'd like to meet in person too.
We could drink a beer with him.
Yeah, he does.
More than one, from what I hear.
Yeah, he definitely loved the pub, but that's part of the reason why he was so famous. I mean, after he would get done fighting, he would just go down to the pub, you know, hang out with average folk, and you know, just that camaraderie that he built with the average person helped him a lot. So
you don't believe he's a top 10?
Nah, I don't. Probably, you might disagree with me, but part of the reason is I would probably add a good number of small British men to my list. You know, guys like Benny Lynch, who's a Hall of Famer, Jackie Patterson, who was also a very good little guy. Owen Moran was a very good featherweight. I believe he beat Battling Nelson. I also think Jack Kig Berg was a very good fighter. That's probably somebody that I would include. You know, I also like guys like Freddie Welsh, of course. Freddie Welsh is a big one that I'm forgetting. He was an excellent lightweight. Hall of Famer.
That is a big one. I forgot, too.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, and it's tough because a lot of these guys fought. My list would probably be saturated with old guys, and it's not because I have some undying affinity to the old times. It's just that they fought so many good people so often. It's almost hard to compare nowadays because guys are, you know, when you win a title, you know, you're fighting every 6 months. I mean, you know, these Eastern Europeans have had, you know, they seem to be a bit more active, but it's just different. You know, these guys fought the best all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said before, I mean, how many of those guys at their best could beat the guys fighting today too?
But it's hypothetical.
Of course, if you change their training routine, maybe they still do. But
you know,
I mean, let's face it, they had to fight that much. That was their job, and you got to eat.
Right?
You know, guys today don't have to. If you're Ricky Hatton, you're gonna make $1 million just for showing up and fighting somebody in 2005.
That's right. Yeah, definitely a different economic system. I mean,
but see, my thing is this: I just think Hatton was one of the greatest junior welterweights that ever lived. Nobody ever beat him at that weight. He beat Kostya. I don't hold a lot of weight because I think 147 was way out of his. He was in over his head there, I think, against most anybody who would have fought.
Yeah, and it's odd, right? Because Hatton, he seemed like a big guy. He would balloon in between fights. And so a lot of people were like, oh, well, he should be a big welterweight. Unfortunately, his body was just constructed in a way where 140 pounds was his prime, and that kind of hurt him too. Him ballooning up in weight, you know, getting up to 180 plus pounds, and then having
and it may have had something to do with why he couldn't fight at 147 successfully.
It could have been
too much wear and tear on the body for all them years just caught up to him about the time he got there. But I remember the Mayweather fight; he wasn't complete. It wasn't a complete one-sided beating, if I remember correctly.
No, it wasn't. Hatton was real competitive for the first 6-7 rounds.
Yeah, because I think I had Hatton actually winning at least 3 rounds through the first 9. Yeah,
it was close, and I remember. I think Hatton got a little bit careless. You know, in his biography, he said he didn't really feel Mayweather's punches, and with Joe Cortez frustrating him, that's what happened. Like as the fight went on, Hatton started getting a little more careless because he didn't fear his power, and he was so frustrated by being broken up all the time. So he fought a little bit differently and ended up getting caught by that check hook. But to the point about Kostya Tszyu, I see this a lot on the internet. A lot of people say, oh, well, Kostya Tszyu was past his prime. And maybe Kostya Tszyu was slipping a little bit, but he was not that far removed to where he was not an elite fighter. I mean, not long before that, he had destroyed Charmaine Mitchell, who everybody thought was his number one contender.
Yeah.
I mean, Charmaine Mitchell
totally destroyed Zab Judah a couple years before that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody remembers that knockout, but yeah, Charmaine Mitchell.
Great.
Yeah, it was. I think a lot of people stood up and had a slow clap after that.
Hey, the only knockout I ever saw that made me happier was the time that Roger Mayweather came to the ring, I believe it was in Texas, with the black shades on, the Black Mamba, him and Lou Duva, and then Rocky Lockridge came out and unloaded and knocked him out in one punch. That was the only knockout that I thought was even better.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Zab at the time. I mean, he's mellowed out a little bit, but yeah, I remember Zab was talking so much shit before the fight. He was like, "This is for everything. This is winner take all." And then he he has a good first round. He's outboxing Zoo in the first round, and then when I watched the second round, Zoo's starting to catch up. He's starting to get his timing down, and then makes him do the chicken dance, and that's all she wrote.
Well, hell, Zab was competitive for 5 or 6 rounds against Mayweather.
Yeah, Chuta's one of those guys. I mean, when he was coming out of the amateurs, I can't remember who it was, but somebody called him Pernell Whitaker with a punch. And if that's not huge praise, I don't know what is. But then when we get in the pros, we see that Zab he didn't have the mental fortitude to stay in a tough fight. I mean, he was just cocky.
Yeah.
Odd looking too. I don't know what he shaves his eyebrows and his hair. I don't know what that's all about. But it's a little, it's just a little weird.
Yeah. No matter how weird he is, he can pee in any bathroom he wants now.
Yeah. I saw him actually. He seemed like a friendly guy. I didn't end up taking a picture with him, but yeah, I saw him at the Kovalev Mohammadi fight that I went to last July, and he seemed like a cool dude. He was taking a lot of pictures with people, but then again,
age can remove a lot of arrogance.
Yeah, it can. Well, he's still kind of being a jerk, honestly, but yeah, forget that.
I said remove a lot of it. I didn't say all of it.
No, Zab still has some, yeah.
All right, so I guess Ricky Burns, and you think Mosley's getting upset this week?
Yeah, I do think Mosley's getting upset. I think the Russian's just a little bit better. But the thing is, I don't want to see Evanesian versus the Thurman Porter winner. But then again, whoever wins, I guess that'll just be, I don't know, it just seems like an unnecessary man.
Yeah, but we sure the hell don't want to see Shane Mosley against him.
No, Mosley's going to get hurt one of these days. I mean, I like the guy. I was a big fan of him at 135.
He was a great fighter.
He was. I thought he was a beast. And then he beats De La Hoya in one of the last, I think, great super fights with two guys in their prime. He beats De La Hoya in a close decision. I loved Mosley when he first moved up, when he was at 135. But he's just carrying it on too long. And part of me
he's a guy that if Mayweather would have fought him a couple years earlier, he may have been able to beat Mayweather.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why Mayweather waited a couple extra years, I think. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. Well, same thing with De La Hoya maybe, but Mosley and Mayweather at 135, I envision it being a bit different. Mosley stunned him, obviously, but me and my brother were talking about this yesterday, and Mosley he didn't have the finishing touch anymore. When he hurt Mayweather, he didn't put it together.
Well, I think a lot of that's just you hurt him, your brain's telling you to go do something that your body it takes a little while to do.
Right? Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, he hurt Mayweather as bad as Mayweather's ever been hurt, I think.
Yep. No, I agree. And unfortunately,
I think at 135, Mosley might have been better.
Maybe. Yeah, I think he definitely hit harder. I mean, I think he was 35-0 with 32 knockouts or something going up. When he had his first fight at welterweight, something like that. Yeah, he was a monster. I love. But I think he's taking too many punches. I don't want to see him take any more.
Yeah, I mean, even from his ex-wife, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I've seen some recent interviews, and he's starting to slur his words. On top of that, I follow him on social media, and he just talks differently. You remember, Mosley used to be so modest. He wasn't really the shit talker, and now he's on Twitter just like calling fans bums and
Would you think that's maybe to try to get more people to watch his stuff?
It could be, but I don't know.
Desperation?
Very well could be. I mean, he is saying things like, "Oh, I could beat Mayweather in my current form," but I mean, it could be, but I don't know. It's just I'm not necessarily convinced.
Or maybe he just been hit in the head too much.
Maybe. I don't know.
But when you get your brain changed, sometimes you don't do things you would have normally done in the past.
Yeah, well, and I noticed he's still sparring top-notch